So I'd like to now invite Nichola Burke to present to us on her experience of being a wheelchair user and what really matters about seating from a user perspective. So welcome, Nichola.
Hi. I'm not very good at speaking and being on a stage, so please bear with me. I was, until 5 years ago, I was an A&E, paediatric A&E sister. Worked full-time, relatively fit and healthy. Had an accident and, as you can see, a double amputee and a paraplegic. My life changed overnight. And I've been on a really steep learning curve. I want to ask is, am I a typical wheelchair user? People will say probably not, but I think possibly am. There's a lot of us who have really active lives. I go quad biking, got a mountain bike. I've got a really active life, but I've only got that life if I've got the right seating. Without a wheelchair, I'm totally dependent on other people. And I've had to fight for every little bit of seating that I've got. And most of it I've had to buy myself. So what's important? And what's important to you as healthcare professionals isn't necessarily what's important to a wheelchair user, as we've had lots of debate over the last 2 days. Things that are really important are lifestyle. I need a chair that's light, that I can collapse, that I can get myself into a car, hang out the door, collapse the chair, and throw it across my knee and put it on the passenger seat. Sounds really daft, but I don't want a black wheelchair. I'm not a black kind of girl. Again, what sort of frame you've got. Comfort's a massive issue. I think I spend an average of 18 hours a day in this chair, and it's really important. It needs to be cleanable. You wouldn't believe how dirty we get. Again, what chairs look like, some of the wonderful high-tech things are absolute monstrosities. And how easy it is to access. Even silly things like the little plates at the side. Because I can't stand, obviously, so I sideways transfer to everything, and I don't want to have to take a plate off every time I want to move. I need a chair that adapts to me, and unfortunately there isn't one chair. I have several chairs. You don't have one pair of shoes. I don't have one wheelchair. As I said, I need to use it for 18 hours a day. It needs to be practical, reliable. They're serviced. Wheelchair services probably, if you're lucky, do it once a year, and the rest of the time you're on your own unless something breaks. It'd be wonderful if we could teach people some basic maintenance skills, because it can take a week for a visit when something goes wrong with your chair. And I think the other thing that's really important is teaching people wheelchair skills. I've not brought it, but I do have a video of me going up an escalator and climbing a set of stairs in a chair. It is possible. And I think it certainly happens with the spinal centres, that there are access to wheelchair skills courses, but for people who don't go through something like a spinal unit, they're very much on their own. Has anybody ever tried to lift a chair? They're really, really heavy. I think this one weighs about 4 kilos. So my handbag weighs more than the chair. But again, you pay for that. Where you live and what do you do? I've got 2 dogs. I want to walk my dogs. And this doesn't cut it for walking dogs. And again, the minimum adaptation for something like that you would have to self-fund is about £400 or £500. Getting a chair in a car is a nightmare. I've just been provided with a power chair, but I can't get it in a car. So it's great, but nobody can bring me home. And you try and find, as we found this morning, you can't book a taxi for a wheelchair for love nor money. As I said, yeah, it's getting better. A lot of places now will let you choose this colour. But it was, always black. I think it really does, if you get a group of wheelchair users together, we're all really different. And it's just nice to be able to express your individuality. Again, these things have to be stored. I think I've got 3 chairs at home. I've got a spare room that's just got wheelchairs in. And again, transporting them. And it's not just for me to carry. If I'm going out with my husband, then he's got to collapse it and put it in and out of the car. Big thing about comfort, and I also want to talk about safety, especially for people who are measuring people for chairs. When I was given my first wheelchair, I knew nothing about wheelchairs, and I've learned as I've gone along. So I went to wheelchair services, was measured. 5 months later, my chair arrived, and I got my chair, and it was a nightmare. I'd been chugging around in an Action 3 and thought it was going to be great, a lovely, lightweight chair. And I spent 60% of the time face down on the floor. And I rang wheelchair services and said, there's something wrong with this chair. No, it's not, it's you. Went back to the people who taught me my wheelchair skills. No, it's not you, it's the chair. And eventually got back to wheelchair services, where we found out they'd measured the length of the chair wrong, and they'd given me a chair that was 5 inches too short. So instead of being sat in a chair, I was perched as if I was on a bar stool. So they sent that chair back and got me another one, and it still wasn't right. And there was just something, it pulled. If I was going down a ramp, I would be pulled to the side. And there were lots of problems with the wheels. And eventually, I ended up, the wheel locked. I came out of the chair, and I ended up with a fracture. And we found out 18 months down the line that when the chair was being shipped, it had been dropped and the frame was kinked. So please, you know if there's something wrong with your shoes. If somebody tells you there's something wrong with the chair, 9 times out of 10 they're right. Seating position, everybody's talked about today, and it's great to be able to change position. Everybody's centre of gravity is really different, and I think certainly after a spinal injury I found it took me a long time to be able to sit. Having spent sort of 2 months lying flat, it took me weeks to learn to be able to sit. And then sort of having amputations as well, my centre of gravity is totally different to a wheelchair user with legs. I do things from really strange positions, and these things need to be taught because people don't, you just suddenly don't feel right. Especially with cushions and so on, the type of covering, some of the sort of basic wheelchair cushions They're awful. If you're going to spend 18 hours sat on it, they're really uncomfortable. Spills, as I've just done. Wheelchairs are incredibly dirty, which is why most wheelchair users don't have carpets. And you do have to learn. I mean, by the end of the day, I will be grey. So it's really important. Can chairs be cleaned? I've got really long hair, and I have to take the casters off every week to remove the hair from them. It's not something you taught, but give it 3 weeks and the wheels will lock. So they're just really silly little things, but they make such a difference. Still really important to me. I'm known as the girl with the green chair and the red hair. I think, as I said before, making sure that the measurements are right. Just a small difference when you're making those measurements causes so many problems. There are lots of aids. I was certainly taught at the beginning that I didn't need to use any aids, but I'm rapidly learning that shoulders are not legs, and my car's quite a bit higher, so I've copped out and I will use a slide board to get in and out of the car because I'd like my shoulders to last a bit longer. As we said before, things that need to be taken off, so the sides and so on. And I think that what I really wanted to say was, when you're dealing with anybody in a wheelchair or providing a wheelchair, if you can raise your expectations of the person, we can all raise standards and it will raise everybody's game. And can I get off this stage now, please?